everybody, and welcome to another episode of All Things Considered Franchising, powered by Scott Milas, franchisecoach.com. I am your host, Scotty Milas. Things Considered Franchising is a podcast dedicated to the entrepreneur, whether you're an independent looking for a business the first time and want to research and explore opportunities franchising, or maybe you're a multi-unit serial business owner already and want to diversify your portfolio. Scott Milas, franchisecoach.com is a consulting organization I own that helps people research and explore opportunities, helping you build the business model, putting you in a position to want to learn, and introducing you to the potential opportunities that are a fit. And today's guest really kind of just goes full circle. A very interesting, I'm going to call him a young man because he still is. But our guest is Alex Rossman, who is CEO at Rossman Media. For those of you who are out in the social media digital world, you probably have heard of him. He has his agency has worked with, Virgin Atlantic, Orange Theory, somebody we know in the franchising world.
Oh, yeah.
And his story is just really interesting. And Alex, welcome to the show.
Scotty, thanks for having me. I know we were touching base before we pressed record, and there's already a lot of good conversations already started. So I'm excited.
Yeah, I just want to touch on your story because it's interesting, and it touches with me because you spent 4 years in college, University of Arizona, I think, correct? Kind of, going through business and being programmed like most of us, probably never thought of business ownership, got an education, came out and went to work for ADP out of all things in sales, a top producer, and then a light bulb went off and said, this ain't going to work. And it's nothing against ADP because there are a lot of people that have made a great living, done very well. But you kind of remind me myself that light bulb went off about entrepreneurship. I want to own my own business. I don't want to work for somebody else. Tell us about that story, because I think it's great for the listeners.
Absolutely. Well, I can say the first thing is I truly believe that entrepreneurship is ingrained in you at a very early age, right? I think there's some people that they can't stay within the lines. They want to break the rules. They want to take risk. It's just inherently in you. And I think every successful entrepreneur I know, they have very similar qualities, right? And so I think I, at a very early age, had those tendencies to want to, not go the traditional path, right? Not go the corporate world, not do that, but really start something that is mine. And I actually grew up in an entrepreneurial household. My dad was an attorney, started his own practice, always ingrained in me at a very young age, be your own boss, be your own boss, be your own boss. So I've kind of gone through, life like that. But, at every inflection point, you got to pay the bills and you got to have a way to make a living. And sometimes, building a business, can hinder that. So you're exactly right. I started really right out of college, worked at ADP. It was honestly a great experience of learning sales, getting really into a routine of talking with C-level executives and business owners and truly understanding how business operates. Because you had told me even before we press record, it's like, you don't learn all that in college, right? And so you've got to go out and experience it to really learn. Did 2 years there. And I said, you know what, how can I bring what I've learned kind of into my own world, create my own business? And it came in the form of a digital marketing agency. And so I was in San Diego at the time, knocking on doors, trying to get, my first clients, and ended up just kind of a domino effect. I mean, bring on new clients, bring on staff, bring on new clients, bring on more staff, to now where we are, over 60 full-time folks and working with some pretty incredible brands.
That's interesting. You mentioned something that is pretty important to me when I'm talking to my clients, and I see the transformation is, and I use the word sales aptitude. Now, I'm going to date myself here. I'm not talking about Willy Loman knocking on doors, going through the white pages or the yellow pages. And if anybody wants to know what those are, white pages and yellow pages, we can have a separate conversation. But sales aptitude plays a role in an entrepreneurial success story. I tell my clients that, look, if you're not comfortable being in front of somebody, that boardroom presentation, making a presentation, that
Mhm.
really more of a retail type business is going to be for you, because
Mhm.
there's what we call the behind scenes. I call it that social media digital platform for marketing versus
Yeah.
going out and getting involved with the chamber and networking.
Yeah.
What is your feeling about that sales aptitude? What you learned
Mhm.
at ADP, and and for people out there listening to this, you know, maybe they are uncomfortable, but they could get to comfortable. What they would have to do
Yeah.
to get there?
I always say people buy from people, and it doesn't matter if it's through digital marketing, through a computer, or if it's face to face. People want to know your story. And yeah, I think it determines, everything's determined on who you are as a person, understanding, where your strong suit is, right? Getting very vulnerable with that fact of like, hey, am I a true people person, can get out and really sway an audience, or am I somebody that maybe is more operational behind the scenes? And I think either way, you can be a successful entrepreneur, but you've got to double down on what works and then hire for your weaknesses, right?
Okay.
So for me, I'm very much a people person. I love talking with people. I love understanding their pain points and how I can really truly be of service. But I'm not so much an administrative operational person. So I've over time hired for those roles. And so I would recommend that to anybody is really get clear with, what are your superpowers? What are your core competencies? And double down on that and then hire for your weaknesses.
That's interesting. So, business entrepreneurs, um, it's okay in your view to hire out to get those people on board. And it can be, it could be a process. You don't have to go out and hire the team right away, but
Yeah.
start adding as you need people for things that you may not be comfortable doing, so you can concentrate on doing what you are good at, but also providing oversight for the business. Because as a CEO, as you
Yeah.
know, there are a number of different hats that you're going to wear.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And for a while there, you're going to wear pretty much all of them. And I think you have to be comfortable being uncomfortable, right? And you have to really be able to say, hey, you know what? Yeah, I'm going to have to run my own payroll before I get a bookkeeper. I'm going to have to,
Right.
drop a proposal before I hire a salesperson. And so that naturally, I think it's best, frankly, if you do know all those roles, so then you know who to hire for those roles as you continue to grow.
Right. Right. Um, we're talking to Alex Rossman, CEO of Rossman Media. I'm Scotty Milas, host of All Things Considered Franchising. Um, let's take a deep dive into digital social media marketing. Whether you're a large corporation, small corporation, new entrepreneur just getting into business, launching a business, I've always looked at marketing as kind of that flying the 747. There's really only one way to fly a 747 to get it off the ground. And of course, once you have it up in the air, you're just not going to throttle back. You got to keep the plane in the air. And I would think that's, to me, that's the kind of the model in a business. You got to keep the business going. So let's talk about media, social media, digital marketing, and the importance and the role it plays within a business developing and succeeding. Talk about some of
Yeah.
those points that young entrepreneurs, middle entrepreneurs experience should be focusing on, and what's important in today's marketing scheme in initiatives.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to go off of your saying there about the plane. I think that's so true, and you've got to keep fueling it, right? And I think that's
Right.
another thing, and that's what marketing is. I mean, it's fueling what's already there, the foundation of your product, your service, and just really doubling down on getting it out to the masses. And in today's world, the quickest and easiest way to do it, and Scotty, you know this by doing this podcast, is to just create content and create video content, share your story, talk about the benefits of your product or service without being too salesy. But people want to know the story. And I would say more than ever before, you have more of that conscious consumer that everything they buy, doesn't matter if it's a service or it's a product off the shelf, they're looking at the ingredients, they're looking at the story. They want to get that foundation before they're actually making, an informed buying decision. And so I think marketing today is so important just with being consistent. You talk about getting the plane off the ground, and the quickest way to, having that plane kind of detour or go in the wrong direction is when you stop, right? So when you just completely stop the momentum, that means not doing any marketing, not really moving the needle in terms of getting your product and service out there. So we're a firm believer as the company that all brands, it doesn't matter if you're an accounting firm, a franchise coach, or a Fortune 500 enterprise brand, you have to always look at marketing as an always on solution.
Interesting. So let's kind of set up the chessboard here for a second. Just and again, I kind of maybe just kind of touch on a couple of points. Someone's going out, they're starting a business, investing in a business, whether it's an independent, a franchise, buying a resale.
Mhm.
If you were evaluating a business or starting a business, where would point A and B be, the first two things on the marketing side that you would want to focus in on? Is it that identity, kind of the name and what you do, or is it a lot of people like to go out and create logos and jingles and
Yeah.
everything, but where does somebody start on all this?
Yeah. So I'm always a believer that, I mean, and again, going back to the plane analogy, sometimes you have to build the plane while you're flying it, right? So
Right.
you're not everything's going to start off perfect where you've got a perfect logo, you've got a perfect mission statement. Sometimes it's your customers, it's the people that are going to kind of help you formulate what that story is and what that product or service is going to be. So I would just say, ultimately identify what you're good at and what you like to do, right? Because I think if you find an industry that naturally, calls to your soul and you really like it, it gets you excited about getting up in the morning, that's the type of business you want to go after. And then I think from there, sometimes people spend way too much time on the branding and how everything's going to look. Sometimes you just got to get out to the market. And I always say, stop overthinking, just do it. And
Right.
sometimes that's when you start to learn and be able to, pivot at times too. Not everything's going to be a straight edge to the top. You've got to really, kind of go with the punches, see what works, see what doesn't, and be amenable.
I've always said to my clients that it's always harder to be successful than it is to fail. And it's just kind of something that I've always had in the
Very
back
cool.
of me that you've got to be putting the effort in. But there are mistakes that people make. I mean, let's face it. And I'm
Mm.
sure in your career and the success of your company, you've kind of scratched your head a little bit and you said, "Oh boy, how are we going to fix this?" What are some of the mistakes, or maybe kind of help us out here on what some of those mistakes are that people could be doing as they try to grow and or
Yeah.
even maintain the stability of growth within the organization, their company.
Yeah. That's a great question, and there's so many to count. I'd be here. We have to extend the podcast another 2 hours. There's always things that go wrong. There's always things that break, and it goes back to what I had said earlier: is you have to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. I think that's the best entrepreneurs know and anticipate that things are going to go wrong. So inevitably you have to be a problem solver. And so for me, it was hiring mistakes. You hire the wrong
Mhm.
person, you identify really quickly how that can spiral. Boom, you got to fix that. Brought on a client that you thought was going to be the best client, going to be transformational, maybe not, right? So there's all these things that could go wrong in a business, and you almost have to anticipate them, right? You always have to keep pushing forward, but the quicker you can think on your feet, the quicker you can solve those problems. I think the quicker you can kind of move on. I always also say that if you make one mistake, don't make it again. So every time that you have things that come up, maybe it was a mistake that was made, really learn from that, course correct so it doesn't happen again. And that any new mistakes or problems that have are just new ones. And maybe, something again that you learn from and build experience off of.
You've worked with some pretty large organizations, and you've worked with some probably smaller um, uh, organizations just starting out that became large organizations.
Yep.
I don't want to name drop, so I'll let you do that. But we talk about common mistakes people make, but what are some of the common things that those organizations are constantly doing or continuing to do as brand recognition and building it. I mean, I'll name one, Orange Theory. Now,
Yeah.
in the franchising industry, Orange Theory is, they were and still are that, kind of that big player, that A player in health and fitness.
Yep.
Everybody who's tried to open or to become a franchisor in health and fitness has kind of mirrored that. So, what are
Yeah.
some of those commonalities? What are those companies doing to constantly making sure that those brands are out there and people know who they are?
Yeah, it's a great question. And, I have worked with the small mom and pops all the way up to, large franchises like an Orange Theory. And I can tell you that you'd be surprised, but a lot of the same problems, a lot of the same things, they're dealing with very similar things, right? It's small business, same with large enterprise brands. You'd think they'd be so far apart, but there's a lot of the same things that they're trying to implement and trying to solve. What I will tell you is, what a brand like Orange Theory is focused on really is just that, the brand. How do we want to be perceived in the marketplace? Who do we want to appeal to? Really understanding who their audience is, I think, is so critical. So just like you, Scotty, I think you do it great, right? You've dialed in your niche, you know who your audience is, you're going after current and new franchise owners, helping them and guide them. That's a very niche, your audience. I think every brand is trying to really identify who is their audience, how do we speak to them effectively, and what platforms to do that on. And what we're seeing is more and more migrating towards social and digital as a way to do that.
In working with franchise systems, and again, we're talking to Alex Rossman, CEO of Rossman Media. In working with franchise systems, one of we talk about issues that franchisors have with franchisees. It's franchisees coming into the system that think that they know more about social media marketing than the actual brand, and then they start doing things, and of course, they change the instruments on the 747, and before you know it, you got to make an emergency landing, and
Yeah.
we're hoping we can save the business. So when you
Yeah.
look at franchising and then an independent, is the marketing strategies all the same? I mean, it sounds like it is, but should potential franchisees or people looking to invest in a franchise really, kind of rub elbows with the franchisor on the marketing strategy, especially if it's not an embryonic brand, it's a brand that's been solidified, 100 plus units and growing? I mean, how important is that for a potential franchisee or someone investing in a franchise?
That's a really great question. Really great question. What I will say is that there's two ways to look at it. First is the corporate brand. I look at that as the macro focus. Like, how do you want the brand to be perceived in all markets, right? From the branding to the messaging to the website to the marketing materials, and then even deeper, who's your buyer persona, right? So there's that kind of macro. Then, if you're a multi-location franchise, then you kind of look at the microclimate, right? So the geo-specific parts of the business, right? So if you're going to be in Tampa versus you're going to be in Los Angeles, maybe you're speaking to different, you're positioning the brand in a different way based on that location. So I think, you really have to get clear on, the true mission of the company, but then also be able to have some flexibility based on the markets that you're in and kind of understanding the lifestyle of the folks that live in that market. And
Interesting.
that's just one example, but yeah.
So franchisors, I mean, I try to explain to people, validation. I mean, get out there and talk to the existing franchisees, get to know the marketing teams, but get out there and speak to the franchisees and see what's going on. I mean, but based on what you're saying, and if I read into a little bit more about what you're saying, is that the market that franchisee or potential franchisee is going into plays an important role on how the marketing is done also, because what may work in Manhattan may not work in, Toledo, Ohio, or, or vice versa.
100%. Yeah, you really have to, and you said it exactly right, is get out there, meet the people, get out there, understand the dynamics, the nuances of that area, because that is going to determine, how you market to those people. And, a great example, Cousins Maine Lobster, another big franchise started from Shark Tank. Very much the case. I flew out to, we went to Tennessee, we bounced from Nashville, we went to Memphis, and even in that short period of time, two totally different markets, right? Totally different markets. One that's brick and mortar, one that's a food truck, just a different atmosphere, a different type of person that's going to be, going to get, a lobster roll in Nashville or Memphis, Tennessee. And so you have to identify that. You've got to tailor that messaging towards that specific market.
That's great. I have a phrase that I like to use, a complacent optimist. And what I look at a complacent optimist, it's somebody who is constantly doing kind of those same things and hoping that something is going to change from doing those activities, or somebody's going to come to them
Right.
and tap them on the back shoulder, or the bookkeeper is going to come, or the CFO is going to come, or the operations, and the 747 is now coming down.
Yeah.
When we look at marketing for an organization, whether it's a large company or a small company, how often should somebody be analyzing or looking at the analytics? Because I think a lot of people get scared about analytics, the data, but how often should somebody be looking at the analytics or reviewing, if you're an owner sitting down with your marketing team or an agency like yourself and kind of
Yeah.
reviewing it?
I love that question. Yeah, it's so much about proactivity. I think the more complacent you get, your finger falls off the pulse and things can go haywire really quick. And so, what I will say is, we advise our clients to be looking at the numbers as frequently as possible. And when we say just numbers and analytics, I mean everything from, how your marketing channels are impacting top line revenue, how it's impacting bottom line, and then all the way over to, hey, what type of person is clicking on our ads? Who's most active, which cities are most active. So really looking at that was marketing analytics as well to kind of determine, a marketing strategy. And so we always say, if you can look at it at least once a month, and very critically once a month, that will really continue to push you farther ahead, because you can make much easier decisions when you have that information in your arsenal versus, oh no, it's, we're into the quarter, had no idea what went wrong, and now we need to kind of go backwards and sift through all of it. So just try to keep your finger on the pulse as much as you can on a monthly basis. And if you have a good marketing partner, that's somebody that should show you that information regularly and walk you through areas of opportunity.
Are there more important areas of marketing that a young business should be focusing on? I've always, I do some training with other consultants, helping them start their consulting business. And I always try to teach people or coach people that you got to be doing a little bit of everything. It's just, you can't put all of your Easter eggs in the one basket, because, you're going to get yourself in trouble. But how
Yep.
important, or what are some of the mainstream things that people should be doing and then growing from there? If you could share.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would agree with you 100%. Scotty, is we call it omni-channel in the marketing space. So, casting that net as wide as you possibly can, especially early on, you're going to have to roll up your sleeves and just get out there and do it, from in person to online. What I would say from a modern marketing standpoint, is start figuring out ways where you can own your data and you can build customer lists, and you can have basically a tried and true platform that you can speak to your clients. I think one of the worst things you can do is kind of cast the net wide and not take advantage of the people you're talking to. And that can be through email. So life cycle marketing, making sure you're building up that subscriber list of, quality, good people that you feel fit your ideal customer base, right? And then secondly, building a social media following is critical, because, the more followers you have, every time you post, that is going and being distributed to them. So, trying to post as much content as you can. And Scotty, this is a great example of when I say content, a podcast, video, something that's going to help promote the product without being overly salesy, but just telling the story. So I would just say that the more you can kind of drive your marketing strategy around building a list or building a very tried and true platform, that's the most important thing you can do.
So it isn't necessarily going out and spending oodles of money. I mean, you don't need a war
No,
chest of.
nope.
You could do this on a cost saving. I don't know if I use the word cost saving, but this could be really budget oriented towards your organization, whether you're larger or small, and kind of build it
Absolutely.
as you go along. So it's not just writing a check for X and just saying, do it. It's
Yeah.
what kind of companies do you enjoy working with, your organization? I mean, obviously you've worked with some well-known clients, but I mean, are there any favorite stories you can share? I mean, with somebody coming in, kind of maybe be a little nervous. I just starting this company. I've been around for 6 months, and
Yeah.
and now I got to write a check, and and then I got to do the spend. So tell me, just share a little story. I think our audience would enjoy that.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I'll just say those are my favorite success stories as a startup that's really starting from ground zero and building something pretty special. And we're usually very particular about who we work with because we want to believe in what they're building and we want to know that we can actually help them, because there's nothing worse than writing a check and then nothing happening, right? It's not comfortable for us. It's not comfortable for, the client. So, one particular story is a new kind of food brand that just got started, gosh, probably 6 to 9 months ago officially. And, they really came to us to help them market, get out there. And not only did they just let us kind of run with it, they really took a backseat approach of saying, okay, you guys come to the table with the strategy, the implementation, what the budget's going to be,
Mhm.
and we're just going to really, put all of our eggs in this basket and really see, how it works. And so, we created a plan that essentially was social media content, advertising, and built a really tailored solution for them. Within 3 months, their platform in terms of social media I'm talking about grew to thousands of followers. They were getting tons of engagement every time they'd post. And ultimately, we built demand so much so that grocery stores were reaching out to them saying, hey, we need your product in store, right? We
Interesting.
need more. And so it just kind of shows you the value. And the budget wasn't that big. I mean, it wasn't. So it kind of goes back to your point, Scotty. If you're a new franchisor or you're a franchisee, you know, you don't need to spend a lot of money to get out there. I think you just have to be smart and kind of identify what's the right strategy. And I think for many small businesses, especially in this case, it's trying a bunch of different things and,
Yep.
seeing what sticks. And then again, I'm going to say this word again, double down on what's working.
Interesting. Interesting. Alex, I could sit here and probably talk to you about these subjects for the next 2 hours, like you said, but believe it or not, we're just about out of time. But and we've been talking with Alex Rossman, CEO of Rossman Media. Alex, if anybody had any questions about media, digital, social, starting a company, maybe they have a company that's doing very well, but they haven't been able to get to that next step or that next level, how would somebody reach out to you? What would be the best way for somebody to reach out to you? Maybe just ask some questions, maybe engage a little bit.
We love all the questions. We'll even do a complimentary audit for you. So we are all about helping small, mid-size, and large businesses. Rossmanmedia.com is the best way to reach us. You can literally just click get my free audit and we'll put that together for you within a week. Get on a call with me or one of our colleagues and kind of talk through a game plan to really, help grow your business.
That's interesting. Great, great, great. Any last minute tidbits? Anything you want to throw in there that I might not have asked? I mean, again, I'm not a marketing genius, that's for sure. But
Hey, well, you know a good amount. I can already tell by the way you market yourself. So
Well,
no, I
thank
would
you.
just say, yeah, one final tidbit, and it's pretty cliche, but just keep going. Like if I was to talk to my younger self when I was starting the company, there's a lot of times I would say, you'd want to throw in the towel and just, be done. Stop flying the plane. We'll go back to that analogy. But just keep going. Just keep pushing through. Understand that every entrepreneur has gone through what you've gone through in some way, shape, or form. You've got to keep pushing through, and usually it's the entrepreneurs that just keep going that end up the most successful. So
Yeah.
you know,
You remind me of something. I remember watching a round table on 20 something, 30 something year olds, out of college in the workplace. And the question was really kind of a direct question. It was, how come in your generation and the generations that are starting to follow you, you guys don't like to talk on the phone? I mean, you know, it always looks like you're not doing anything. And you know, you could see some of the people, you know, 3 of the 4 people kind of stood up in their seats, and then one kind of jumped in and says, well, we are working. We're just working
Right.
differently than your generation, people like myself. We're communicating, but you can't see us communicating, or we're
Yeah.
communicating through email. So there's a lot more to marketing today, and different, a lot more probably, you know, there's a lot more than 4 wheels to the marketing than it was, you know, 25, 30 years ago.
Oh, 100%. Even I can't tell you how many times I've had to really explain what I actually do. When I was first starting my company, like, what exactly does that mean that you do? So I totally get it.
That's interesting. Well, again, Alex, thanks very much. We've been talking to Alex Rossman, CEO at Rossman Media. Reach out to him. The information is right there on the screen. I am Scotty Milas, the host of All Things Considered Franchising, powered by Scott Milas, franchisecoach.com. Feel free to reach out to me either by email, scott@scottmilasfranchisecoach.com, or go to my website and inquire, scottmilasfranchisecoach.com. Alex, we hope to have you back again soon. Maybe something new and exciting in marketing is going to come about. But until then, thank you very much for your time. And this is Scotty Milas saying so long until next time.